The cost of living in Mexico in 2026. This is a topic that everybody has an opinion on. How cheap or expensive is Mexico really? Is it as cheap as they say? Is it basically US prices these days, like other people say? Maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Mexico continues to attract retirees and expats with its low cost of living, favorable climate, cultural depth, and just significantly lower living costs compared to the US, Canada, and Europe. In 2026, the cost of living remains affordable for most budgets while offering modern amenities in many areas. Overall cost of living, on average, Mexico's cost of living is about 35 to 50% lower than the United States. A single person can live comfortably on $1,200 to $2,000 US per month, excluding rent in many locations. A couple typically spends $1,800 to $3,000 USD monthly for a good standard of living. These figures include housing, food, utilities, transportation, and healthcare. Luxury lifestyles in upscale areas can reach $4,000 to $5,000 USD or more per month. Of course, costs vary widely depending on the city or town and personal habits, and also just the region of Mexico. If you're in northern Mexico, closer to the United States, it's a lot more expensive than southern Mexico. If you go south of Mexico City, it's basically half price compared to northern Mexico. So enormous disparity even within the country. Let's do a monthly budget breakdown for a single person. A modest but comfortable single person budget ranges from $1,200 to $1,800 US per month. This includes rent for a one-bedroom apartment or studio at $400 to $800 US, groceries and household items at $200 to $300, utilities, including electricity, water, and internet, at $60 to $120 US, local transportation at $50 to $100 US, and dining out or entertainment at $150 to $250 US. Healthcare and miscellaneous expenses add another $100 to $200 US. And remember, you can go get your teeth cleaned for $20, $30 in Mexico. You can go to the doctor for $50 for a private specialist visit. So everything is just way less expensive. Now let's do a monthly budget for a couple. A retired couple can maintain a comfortable lifestyle on $1,800 to $3,000 US per month in the most popular destinations. Typical breakdown: rent for a two-bedroom home or condo at $600 to $1,200 USD, groceries and eating out at $350 to $550, utilities at $80 to $150, transportation $80 to $150, healthcare $150 to $300 US per month, and entertainment or travel within Mexico at $200 to $400 per month. These numbers assume a balanced mix of local and imported goods, plus occasional dining out. Now let's do a cost comparison by popular cities. Lake Chapala and Ajijic remain among the most popular retirement spots, with couples often living well on $1,800 to $2,500 USD. Rent for a nice two-bedroom home ranges from $500 to $900 US. I'll probably get some comments saying that houses are way more expensive to rent in Ajijic, maybe in the most trendy expat area. But generally speaking, in Jalisco and Michoacan, it's San Miguel de Allende offers cultural appeal with slightly higher costs, typically $2,000 to $2,800 USD for a couple due to increased dining and activity options. I found San Miguel to actually be quite expensive for the restaurants because it's not real Mexico at all in a lot of ways. It's really just retirees. Merida in the Yucatan, very safe, popular destination for couples, families, retirees. And it's a low cost of living, but it can be a bit of a bubble. The Yucatan in southern Mexico are very affordable, where you can easily live well in southern Mexico and in the Yucatan Peninsula for less than $2,000 a month. Mexico City, a favorite among digital nomads and expats, is a high cost of living as well. maybe 30% less than a comparable US city. But you really get those urban conveniences, you get the networking, you get walkable neighborhoods. The Condesa is expensive for a reason. It's very nice. Roma Norte, Polanco, these nicer areas of Mexico City are expensive because they're genuinely nice. So expect to spend, $3,000-$4,000 a month to live in these nicest areas in the country, essentially. So it really depends if you're in a big city or in a small town. Depends if you're in the north or the south. And it also depends, are you in the gringo vortex zone or not? Are you in the expat international neighborhood of the city, the Polancos of this world? Or are you in a normal sort of middle-class Mexican neighborhood? All these things have an impact on the prices and your monthly budget. Now, that discussion there was mostly about what city, which really feeds into how much you pay for rent. And there's a bit of a trickle-down effect with how much you might pay for groceries and doctor's visits. But I want to get into some of those smaller expenses that add up beyond rent. So a detailed expense category here. So groceries for local produce, meat, and staples remain very affordable in Mexico, $150 to $300 monthly for one person. Imported items raise cost. Utilities range $60 to $150 a month, depending on air conditioning usage. If you're in Playa del Carmen, you're going to use a lot of AC. If you're in Mexico City, you might never use AC up in the mountains. So it really depends. But electricity, generally speaking, is actually quite cheap in Mexico. It's not super expensive. But if you're on the coast using AC, I have seen people run up $300, $400 a month in air conditioning costs by leaving it on 24/7 in Playa del Carmen. But, generally speaking, your electricity bills are going to be quite low in Mexico. High-speed internet is cheap as well, $25 to $40 a month, a lot cheaper than Canada. Public transportation is very cheap, as I'm sure anyone who's been to Mexico or Latin America knows. Uber is super cheap, where you can get an Uber ride for $3 to $10. You can go super far, and it's still not expensive. And so most people just Uber everywhere in Latin America as an expat. But public transportation is also insanely cheap. Where you're paying 25 cents or 50 cents for a ride across town and this kind of thing. Obviously comes with a little bit of danger, and public transportation in Mexico is an interesting topic. But transportation in general in Latin America is a lot less expensive. Intracity buses can be very cheap. Flights within Mexico are very cheap as well. If you fly from, Mexico City to Cancun or Tijuana or Vallarta or something, those inter-Mexico flights are very inexpensive, often less than $100. Dining out at local restaurants, $8 to $15 USD per meal. Upscale venues can reach $25 to $40 US per meal. $40 a person in Mexico is a pretty expensive dinner. Maybe that sounds laughably cheap to someone from the US, but Mexico for dining is very cheap because it's just so competitive. You have to compete with the taco stand on the corner. Even the restaurants do in a sense. So food is very competitive in Mexico. Another category is domestic help, such as a housekeeper, which, can run $100 a week, maybe $400 or $500 a month, whatever the minimum wage in Mexico, the minimum daily rate, that's typically around what you're going to pay for domestic help. But of course, if you want to pay them more, give them tips, whatever. But just so you know, typically around minimum wage is around what you can pay for domestic help, which is pretty cool because then you can get a private chef, you can get a groundskeeper, you can get a housekeeper, a maid. If you have a big house, a groundskeeper can be really nice, a pool guy, that kind of thing. So all the domestic help, very inexpensive in Mexico, even plumbers and stuff like that, all very inexpensive. Moving on to healthcare and insurance costs, private doctor visits cost $30 to $60 US. Prescription medications are significantly cheaper than in the US. Legal residents can enjoy IMS public health care for an annual fee of around $1,000, I think. it's free. Some sources say it's free. I've accessed the public service a little bit and not had to pay the annual fee. So I'm a little unclear how that works. But you're probably not going to use public health care that much, even though it's free. Many expats choose to just pay out of pocket for private health care, combine IMSS with private international health insurance, costing, $100 to $300 per month for comprehensive coverage, depending on your age. But if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, very easy to get private health insurance in Mexico. Dental work and elective procedures offer major savings, prescriptions, everything about healthcare, scans, MRIs, everything is just way cheaper in Mexico. Some additional factors that might affect your budget, lifestyle choices. Private school is a big one. There's this kind of debate in the expat community. It's like in Mexico, you kind of need to send your kids to private school, whereas in the US or Canada, maybe you can send them to public school and it'll be just fine. Where in Mexico, pretty much everybody goes to private school. But the thing is, there's different tiers of private school. There's very elite schools that charge, $20,000 per year or more. But there's also less expensive private schools. They might be sort of Catholic schools or Montessori schools or sort of like hippie Montessori type schools. There's lots of school options in Mexico depending on where you are. So I think there's actually quite a lot of schooling options in Mexico, but just something to factor into your budget that it's not going to be free. And so you want to research the private schools and different types of schools. In conclusion, the cost of living in Mexico in 2026 allows most retirees and expats to enjoy a high quality of life for significantly less than in their home country. A single person can manage to live well on $1,200 to $2,000 a month, while couples thrive on $1,800 to $3,000 a month, depending on location and lifestyle. Popular retirement hotspots balance affordability with amenities, healthcare, and community support. Success comes from realistic budgeting, doing your research, choosing the right location, and adapting to local options. Research specific sites and current prices before moving to create a personalized